So what I actually want to talk about next is software design issues. Will it parallelize? Right? It sounds a little bit murdery if you say, I want to cut your program and then pause dramatically and then say, into parallelizable chunks to speed it up. It does sound bad, but like ultimately, what we're trying to do is find where we can apply some techniques to get a benefit. And yeah, what we'll talk about are basically questions of like, will it parallelize? What are things that would prevent this from working the way that we want it to work? So first one is locking. We're going to talk some more about this shortly, but if we think back to like a concurrency course and a lot of discussion of locking, the more we have, right, the more locks and the more locking that we need, the less scalable the code is going to be. This happens because locks are resources, and they protect various resources as well, right? But the more threads or processes that are trying to acquire that lock, the more resource contention we have. And contention in this sense just means that like, hey, we want this resource, someone else wants it as well. Chances are someone is going to be forced to wait at some point, right? And waiting is getting us farther from the goal. We want to do more stuff, we want to get work done, and waiting isn't ideal. Now, waiting is necessary in some case, right? We put concurrency controls in because we need it, and it's not there just because we like it, but more waiting and coordination are going to be necessary, and those will add overhead. Anytime a thread is forced to wait, it's a limitation on parallelization and a limitation on performance. We have a whole discussion coming up around sort of how to use locks well, where we will focus in on this a little bit. Next is memory allocation. And we're assuming in this case that we are talking about something that's not like an embedded system where all memory is statically allocated in advance, and we in fact have dynamic memory allocation. You can do some static upfront memory allocation to try to get around this, but if there is dynamic memory allocation, right, it is a potential bottleneck. What's up with that? Well, the dynamic memory allocation is likely run by your operating system, and the operating system will potentially have something that's very centralized, right? It might support only one thread allocating or deallocating at a time, and that means it might not scale super well. There's also some overhead of like switching to the kernel and coming back from it, which you may not be able to get around. There are some techniques for dynamic memory allocation that allow things to work in parallel. There are some cool research papers out there about parallel malloc and stuff like that, which does open up some possibilities for different threads to be working on getting memory from the pool sort of at the same time. But it is noteworthy that dynamic memory allocation is potentially a bottleneck. Next idea is about pools and workers. A first implementation of some code might involve starting a thread for a task and then destroying it when it's complete. If there are a lot of threads and or these things are short-lived, right, then we might end up with a fair amount of overhead, and the fraction of time put towards allocating and deallocating the threads is significant in a way that we don't like. That's not the only way. And the alternative approach to this is to have a pool of workers. Workers are created once and only once, and then the application submits units of work, if you want to call it that, and on the other side, right, there's some mechanism for making sure that workers pick up the work to be done, or work is assigned to them, something like that. Make sure that we end up with work being put in the hands of workers. So this is neat as a programming practice, right? We can have the number of workers scaled based on the original hardware. You can say, we have one thread per available core, or 2 threads per core, or something like that, and that's nice. And as the application developer, you don't always need to know specific details about how many cores there are, right? Maybe we can let the operating system decide how many workers there should be to try to allocate things in the most optimal way. And maybe that's just convenient, right? Suppose, though, we have to decide, right? This does depend on the resources that your threads use. If we're writing computationally intensive threads, then maybe match or have fewer than the number of virtual CPUs. If threads are likely to get blocked as a result of I/O, then maybe you want to have a bit more to make sure that you are making the best possible use of CPU time. There's some interesting stuff linked in the notes about thread pools kind of in general, but modern languages provide this sort of thing for us, right? Like you don't have to write your own implementation. Java has a thread pool executor, C# has a thread pool, glib has a gthread pool, and there's a Rust crate for this. We're going to take a quick look at a simple Rust program in which we use a thread pool crate to take away some of the complexity. So suppose we've added the thread pool crate, right? We're going to use thread pool from it, and we can create a new pool with, in this case, 8 threads. That's fine, right? Like 8 is arbitrary for the sake of this example. There's no reason why it has to be exactly 8. Again, you would choose based on like what's the execution hardware that you have. Do you have an 8-core CPU and you expect to be CPU bound, or do you have a 4-core CPU and you expect for there to be a lot of I/O? Like either of those makes sense to choose 8. Okay, so we're going to create a new queue and we're going to wrap it into mutex and then put it in an atomic reference count. And we'll just print the main thread ID just so we kind of have an idea of it. And yeah, we're going to then just push a bunch of data into this queue, 4,000 integers, and then we will push a -1 in there as a sentinel value that says, all right, we're done and it's time to go home. Okay. Right, and then what we will do is clone the queue 4 times in this for loop, and then we're going to execute using the thread pool this closure here. And in the closure, right, what we're going to do is lock the queue. If the queue is not empty, take an item out of it. If it's -1, we reach our sentinel value. So we're actually going to put the -1 back so that other threads will get a chance to grab it. And if they do, they will also know it's time to exit. But if we do get the -1, then it's time to go. And otherwise, we just print the value that we got, and then we will continue and we'll do the next iteration of the loop. Okay, at the end of this, right, we're going to join the thread pool. So we're going to wait for all of the threads in this pool to finish. Sounds good, right? So if we execute this, right, we can observe kind of the behavior. Main thread has some ID, and thread will get some number, and this continues on and on. Until we get to 3,999 based on the elements that we decided to put in there. And then the different threads will get the signal to exit, and then they're all done. So this is nice, right? It gives us this behavior of what we're going to expect of different threads running in parallel without needing specifically to create and destroy threads. We just declare the thread pool, and then once the thread pool is created, we can just say go. We can give it work, and we can wait for it to be done. So it is important to note that when we call execute, I'll go back to that slide, right? This is a job to be run. So if our thread pool has 4 workers, we want to push the consume job on it 4 times. In this case, we created with 8 workers, but we're only pushing 4 jobs. That's fine, right? Some of the workers don't end up with anything to do. There's nothing wrong with that. It just means we have a bit more capacity than we're actually using. Again, that's not the end of the world. This sort of thing is reasonably common. Not any sort of issue. Okay, why would we choose this over our own implementation, right? If we spawn the threads using the spawn mechanism, right, we have to join each one individually. We have to be sure that we've created them and joined them and everything. And we also have, as you've probably seen already, some of the headaches around scoping. And we can kind of skip all of that at this stage, right? Where you can say, all right, creating a thread pool is really straightforward, and we can assign it work, and we can join at the end just once and not worry about order in which they finish or anything like that. So hopefully this gives you kind of a good idea of thread pools and the benefit of using them. And yeah, ideally you will be able to make good use of these.